In a world where social media often dictates what is attractive or desirable, the truth is that many of the qualities men deeply admire in women are not the flashy surface-level traits so often celebrated. Instead, they are quiet, consistent habits, subtle expressions of character, strength, and depth that tend to go unnoticed by the world but leave a lasting impression on the men who observe them closely. One such habit is authenticity. There's something profoundly magnetic about a woman who is comfortable in her own skin, not performing for approval or bending to fit into society's constantly shifting expectations. She speaks her truth with kindness, wears what she likes because it reflects her personality, and embraces her imperfections rather than hiding them. This kind of realness is rare, and it draws admiration because it communicates a grounded sense of self. Men often find this kind of authenticity refreshing because it creates space for sincerity in return. There's no guessing, no masks, just a woman standing confidently in who she is, and that's incredibly attractive. Closely tied to authenticity is a quiet form of confidence, one that doesn't boast or seek the spotlight, but reveals itself in the way a woman carries herself. She doesn't need to be the loudest voice in the room, because she knows her value isn't up for debate. She's independent, makes her own choices, and doesn't rely on someone else's presence to feel complete. This independence is not about rejecting help or companionship, but rather about showing she can thrive on her own. Men notice and respect this kind of strength, even if they don't always voice it. It reflects emotional maturity and self-sufficiency, which are powerful qualities in a partner. Another unseen habit that quietly earns admiration is how a woman handles stress, pressure, or setbacks. Life throws challenges at everyone. But there are women who meet those moments with grace, not because they're unaffected, but because they choose to respond instead of react. Whether it's staying calm during conflict, showing patience in frustrating situations, or simply continuing to move forward after a disappointment, this kind of composure is deeply admired. Men often pay attention to how a woman handles adversity. It speaks to resilience, emotional control, and a depth of character that only emerges in difficult moments. Men also quietly admire women who truly listen. In a world filled with distractions, being fully present is rare and powerful. A woman who listens not just to respond, but to understand creates a sense of emotional safety and intimacy. This kind of presence makes others feel seen and heard without judgment. It reveals emotional intelligence, a quiet superpower that goes beyond appearances. Men notice the way she pays attention to the details, how she picks up on unspoken emotions, and how she offers empathy instead of solutions when it's needed. It's in those small, unseen gestures that a deeper connection is often formed. Another habit that stands out, though often unnoticed at first, is the pursuit of passion and purpose. A woman immersed in something she loves. Whether it's a creative pursuit, a meaningful career, or a personal goal, carries an energy that draws others in. Her passion makes her light up, and that light is contagious. Men admire this kind of drive, not because of what she achieves, but because of the sense of fulfillment and direction it brings to her life. It shows she has a life beyond her relationships, and that she's not waiting to be completed by someone else. Her purpose adds depth, making her not just a partner, but an inspiration. Then there are the subtler acts. Those small, often unnoticed ways a woman nurtures the people around her. It might be remembering the details of someone's bad day and checking in later, or offering quiet encouragement when someone is doubting themselves. These aren't grand gestures meant to impress, they're simply extensions of who she is. There's a strength in these gentle acts of care that men deeply respect. They show that kindness is a choice, not a weakness. These moments might not be Instagram-worthy, but they leave a lasting emotional imprint. In a world that often praises boldness and spectacle, this kind of understated strength is quietly revered. These habits don't shout, they don't seek validation. They are woven into daily life, expressed through consistency, presence, and depth. And while they may not make headlines or turn heads in a crowd, they are the very qualities that create meaningful, lasting admiration, often spoken not in words, but felt deeply over time. When it comes to admiration, what men truly notice and value in women often defies popular assumptions. It's not always the bold or obvious traits that capture attention in a lasting way. Instead, it's the understated, almost invisible habits that gradually build deep respect and fascination. These are not performative behaviors designed to impress, but organic parts of how a woman lives, thinks, and interacts. They are the everyday moments that reveal depth, thoughtfulness, and quiet strength, qualities that linger long after physical attraction fades. One of the most powerful yet often unnoticed habits is how a woman respects her own boundaries and the boundaries of others. Men are drawn to women who know how to say no without apology, who aren't afraid to disappoint when it means staying true to themselves. This kind of self-respect is contagious. It encourages others to act with integrity and reinforces a standard of mutual respect. It's not about being distant or cold, but about having a strong inner compass. A woman who honors her limits, values her time, and doesn't stretch herself thin for approval becomes someone others admire, not just for what she gives, but for how clearly she defines herself. There is also deep admiration for women who exhibit a kind of intentional stillness in a world obsessed with constant motion. She's not rushing to fill every silence or every day with noise. She enjoys her own company, takes time to think before she speaks, and doesn't feel the need to over-explain her actions. This restraint, this quiet presence, is magnetic because it reflects comfort with oneself. It communicates a sense of emotional grounding, which often has a calming effect on others. Men may not articulate it, but they're drawn to the way such women carry themselves with a kind of peaceful self-possession that makes everything around them feel more steady. Another subtle habit men deeply admire is when a woman takes care of her inner world, her mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being. She doesn't just focus on appearance or external achievements. Instead, she cultivates clarity, self-awareness, and balance. She might meditate, journal, go to therapy, or simply know how to step back and recalibrate when life feels overwhelming. This inner work isn't always visible, but its results are. It shows up in how she communicates, in how she chooses her battles, in how she refrains from projecting her pain onto others. Men are often quietly moved by this kind of inner discipline because it creates trust and emotional safety. There's also admiration for women who engage with life through curiosity rather than cynicism. She asks questions, seeks new experiences, and pays attention to the small things, like the way someone lights up when they talk about something they love. Her sense of wonder isn't naive, it's intentional. She hasn't allowed the weight of the world to make her bitter. That lightness, that openness, is rare, especially in adulthood. Men may not know how to describe it, but they feel it. It makes conversations with her feel alive, and it adds color and meaning to even the most ordinary interactions. Men also notice how a woman treats people she has nothing to gain from. It's in the way she speaks to the waiter, the janitor, the elderly neighbor. There's a quiet nobility in the way she offers respect, no matter who's watching. It speaks to values, not performance. And values are magnetic, especially when they are lived consistently without seeking credit. This kind of decency builds a deep, silent admiration, because it's not about being liked, it's about doing what's right. Another habit that tends to go unseen but speaks volumes is when a woman carries herself with purpose, even in small tasks. Whether she's cleaning her space, preparing a meal, or working toward a personal goal, she brings care and attention to what she does. This isn't about productivity or perfection, but about intentionality. There's something beautiful about watching someone who takes pride in her life, who lives as though the little things matter. That sense of presence, being all there even in the mundane, is rare and captivating. Finally, one of the most deeply admired but rarely spoken about habits is emotional restraint. A woman who feels deeply, but doesn't let every emotion explode outward, who can pause, breathe, and respond with intention rather than reaction. She embodies a kind of strength that is profoundly respected. It's not about suppressing feeling, but about mastering it. This kind of emotional intelligence creates harmony rather than chaos, and in a world where drama often dominates, it's a quiet but powerful quality that leaves a lasting impression. In the complexity of human relationships, there's often a quiet gap between what's talked about publicly and what's genuinely felt privately. When it comes to what men truly admire in women, many of the most meaningful qualities are not the ones loudly celebrated or displayed on social media. They're not always tied to appearance, status, or even personality in the conventional sense. Instead, they often exist in the subtleties, in the small, consistent habits that most people overlook. These are the habits that reveal character when no one's watching and speak louder than charm ever could. One of these habits is a woman's ability to stay consistent in her values. Men deeply admire women who do not shift their core beliefs to suit whoever is in the room. Whether it's about integrity, loyalty, or what she stands for in her personal life, this kind of consistency earns respect. It creates a sense of predictability in the best way, not boring predictability, but the kind that builds trust and emotional safety. She doesn't play roles depending on her environment. She knows who she is, and that inner alignment shows up in how she treats others, how she communicates, and how she lives. This steadiness isn't loud or attention-seeking, but it carries a quiet dignity that lingers. There's also something profoundly admirable about the way some women carry the weight of others' emotions with gentleness. She doesn't just listen to respond, she listens to understand. When a man speaks to her about his fears, his goals, or even his confusion, she doesn't rush to fix it or turn the conversation back to herself. She holds space. She respects the vulnerability being offered. This capacity to hold emotional weight without trying to control it is something few talk about, but men remember it. It's the kind of emotional generosity that makes a man feel safe to be human, not just strong. Men also notice the way a woman handles solitude. A woman who isn't afraid to be alone, who doesn't need constant attention or external stimulation, shows that she is grounded. She knows how to fill her own cup. She doesn't seek relationships from a place of emptiness, but from fullness. That sense of self, contentment radiates without her needing to announce it. Whether she's out on a walk by herself, enjoying a book at a cafe, or simply spending time with her own thoughts, it signals emotional maturity and personal strength. Her peace is not dependent on others, and that independence is often deeply attractive. Not in a boastful way, but in a way that shows she values herself. Another unseen habit is the way she forgives, not for others but for herself. She doesn't carry grudges like heavy armor. Instead, she chooses peace over prolonged bitterness. It's not weakness, it's wisdom. She understands that holding on to resentment only poisons her own experience, so she practices letting go, even when she's justified in her anger. This doesn't mean she tolerates disrespect, but that she refuses to be defined by pain. That kind of emotional discipline is rare, and men quietly admire it. It shows a balance of strength and softness that isn't easy to cultivate. There is also something powerful in the way she embraces the present. She doesn't constantly compare herself to others, chase trends, or live for the next moment of external approval. Instead, she's rooted in what's happening right now. Whether she's laughing wholeheartedly, engaging in meaningful conversation, or simply enjoying a quiet moment, she's there, fully. This presence is magnetic. It gives people around her permission to slow down, to connect, to be real. Men find themselves drawn to this energy without always knowing why. It's calming. It feels like home. What often goes unnoticed, but never unappreciated, is a woman's ability to be resilient without turning cold. Life may have tested her, through heartbreak, failure, or loss, but she hasn't let it harden her. She still believes in kindness. She still chooses optimism when cynicism would be easier. That quiet strength, the ability to stay soft in a harsh world, is something men don't always verbalize but often revere. It's not naive, it's courageous. It takes strength to keep showing up with an open heart when life has given plenty of reasons not to. Finally, there is deep admiration for the woman who practices self-respect not just in how she demands to be treated, but in how she treats herself. The way she speaks to herself when no one is around, the standards she holds herself to, the way she honors her body, her mind, and her dreams. All of these invisible acts form the foundation of her presence. She doesn't wait for a man or anyone else to validate her worth. She lives as though she already knows it. And that quiet certainty is more captivating than any performance could ever be. In a world constantly encouraging people to be louder, flashier, and more performative, what truly leaves a mark is often found in the opposite. The habits that men quietly admire in women are not the ones broadcasted for attention or applause. They are the subtle, often invisible behaviors that reveal the depth of a woman's character, not just her charm. These habits don't call for recognition, yet they leave a lasting impression that lingers far beyond surface-level attraction. Men tend to admire women who possess a natural sense of calm, a steadiness that isn't dependent on everything going right, but that comes from within. It's in the way she responds rather than reacts. It's seen in the moments when chaos swirls around her, yet she refuses to become part of the storm. She doesn't silence her emotions, but she doesn't let them control her either. Her ability to remain grounded, even when things don't go her way, communicates a kind of emotional security that doesn't have to be spoken. This doesn't mean she doesn't feel deeply. It means she's built a quiet strength from learning how to carry herself through adversity without losing her core. There's also something deeply admirable about a woman who takes responsibility for her own happiness. She doesn't place the burden of her fulfillment on others. She cultivates joy in small moments, a walk, a good book, a phone call with a friend, and she doesn't need someone else to entertain or complete her. This kind of emotional autonomy is rare. It shows that she sees her life as whole and valuable regardless of relationship status. Men may not always articulate it, but they notice and admire this quality. It creates a sense of ease, being with someone who wants to share joy, not extract it. Another habit that quietly captivates is her way of observing the world. She notices things others don't. A shift in someone's tone, the beauty of light through a window, the slight change in someone's mood. She has the kind of attention to detail that doesn't scream for credit, but makes others feel seen in ways they didn't expect. Her attentiveness is not invasive, it's intuitive. She can read a room without speaking, adjust her tone when someone needs gentleness, or remain silent when someone simply needs space. This emotional attunement reflects not just intelligence but care. And while it may never be publicly praised, it builds deep trust. Men also quietly admire how some women handle their ambitions, not in how loudly they talk about them, but in how steadily they pursue them. She doesn't need to prove anything to anyone, she simply moves toward what matters to her. She stays late to finish something she believes in. She says no to things that don't align with her long-term vision. She may not always be in the spotlight, but she has an internal fire that's impossible to miss once you get close enough. What makes it so powerful is that her drive doesn't come from insecurity or comparison, it comes from purpose. She's not running to be better than someone else. She's running toward who she's meant to be. What often goes unspoken, but deeply felt, is the way she honors her word. When she says she'll do something, she does it. When she makes a promise, she follows through. It might seem like a small thing, but in a world full of empty gestures and vague intentions, a woman whose actions align with her words becomes someone others can depend on. That quiet reliability is powerful. It shows integrity. It shows maturity. And while it may not get immediate attention, it builds a foundation of trust that is both rare and magnetic. There's also a kind of understated power in how she expresses affection, not in grand displays but in quiet, consistent ways. It could be the way she checks in when someone's had a tough day, or the way she remembers tiny, meaningful details. She doesn't perform her care, she lives it. Her love is steady, not performative. It's given freely, not calculated. And because she gives from a place of fullness rather than need, it creates an atmosphere of warmth without pressure. Men often feel safe in this space without realizing exactly why. It's because the affection is genuine, unforced, and deeply rooted. Finally, one of the most profoundly admired habits is when a woman respects herself when no one else is looking. She keeps her standards even when there's no one there to applaud them. She maintains discipline, dignity, and grace not for attention, but because that's who she is. This self-respect shows up in countless subtle decisions: what she allows into her life, what she lets go of, and how she speaks to herself in private. Men may never see the internal work that fuels it, but they feel the presence of a woman who knows her worth, and that quiet strength becomes unforgettable. Admiration is often assumed to come from what is seen, what is displayed, what is obvious. Yet in reality, some of the most profound admiration grows in silence, in moments when no one is watching, in habits too subtle to be named, but too powerful to be forgotten. Men, though not always vocal about it, often notice these quiet habits in women. Practices that reflect strength, self-awareness, and sincerity, woven seamlessly into everyday life. One of the most deeply respected, yet rarely spoken about, habits is how a woman manages her reactions. It is not that she doesn't feel anger, frustration, or sadness, but she does not let her emotions override her wisdom. When challenged or misunderstood, she doesn't immediately resort to defensiveness or sharp words. Instead, she pauses, thinks, and speaks with intention. This level of self-control is not about suppression, but about emotional mastery, a discipline that many men quietly hold in high regard. It suggests maturity, security, and a capacity to create peace rather than drama. It's not about always being calm, but knowing when not to escalate what doesn't need to be a storm. Men also admire women who know when to speak and when to stay silent, not because they're timid, but because they understand the power of timing and presence. She doesn't interrupt to be heard, nor does she stay quiet to shrink. She observes, listens deeply, and contributes meaningfully. This balance between expression and restraint makes her words more powerful. She's not in love with the sound of her own voice. She speaks because she has something thoughtful to offer. This quiet discernment often earns a level of respect that louder, more attention-seeking behavior rarely does. There's another kind of unseen strength in the way she handles failure or criticism. Rather than collapsing under judgment or seeking constant reassurance, she processes what's useful and leaves the rest. She is not defined by her mistakes, and she doesn't dwell in self-pity. This resilience is invisible to most, but deeply felt by those close to her. She learns, she adjusts, and she moves forward with grace. Men admire this kind of resilience because it shows she can hold herself up in difficult moments, not because she has to, but because she chooses to. What also stands out, though quietly, is the way she supports others without making it about herself. She doesn't offer help to be praised, nor does she expect anything in return. Whether it's lifting someone up in a moment of doubt, encouraging a friend behind the scenes, or simply being present for someone in silence, her kindness is never transactional. This kind of quiet generosity builds deep admiration, because it reveals a heart that gives without calculating gain. It's rare and deeply grounding to be in the presence of someone who can love, support, and nurture without needing credit. Men often admire women who remain curious, who never stop learning, evolving, or exploring their inner world. She may not be loud about her journey, but she's always seeking to grow. She asks questions, reads, reflects, and listens to different perspectives. She's not rigid in her thinking. She's open yet grounded. This intellectual humility is disarming. It makes conversations richer and allows relationships to deepen, because she brings new energy and thought into every interaction. She's not trying to impress anyone with how much she knows. She's simply interested in life, and that interest is contagious. There's also something quietly powerful about a woman who holds high standards in how she lets others treat her. She doesn't need to scream boundaries or demand respect. She simply lives them. If someone crosses a line, she doesn't create drama. She distances herself with quiet certainty. Her life reflects her values. She doesn't tolerate dishonesty, manipulation, or disrespect, not because she's hard, but because she understands her worth. This kind of unwavering self-respect earns admiration not through confrontation, but through clarity. Men often observe this silently and internalize the message. This is someone who values herself and won't allow anyone to devalue her. Perhaps most invisible, but most impactful, is the way she shows up for herself day after day. She may be healing, struggling, juggling roles and expectations, but she continues to show up, with intention, with care, and with hope. She keeps going when no one claps for her, celebrates the small victories, and allows herself rest without guilt. Her private discipline, emotional endurance, and quiet faith in her own journey become a force of gravity that others feel. Men may not witness every part of this commitment to self, but when they sense it, they are drawn to it with deep, often unspoken respect. There's something undeniably magnetic about certain women, though not for the reasons society often emphasizes. It's not always about looks, status, or charisma in the way it's commonly understood. Instead, what captures quiet admiration from men are the hidden habits, small, consistent ways of being that many never even notice. These women are not trying to be admired. They are simply living with a depth of character that speaks volumes without ever needing to raise its voice. Their habits aren't flashy, but they are unforgettable. One of the most powerful unseen habits is the way she maintains a quiet integrity in her day-to-day actions. She honors her promises, even the small ones, and keeps her word not because someone is watching, but because that's who she is. She doesn't exaggerate her stories or inflate her image to impress anyone. She is truthful in a world where truth is often bent to fit narratives. This kind of authenticity feels rare and grounding. Men notice when a woman lives in alignment with her principles, and while they may not always compliment it out loud, they respect it deeply. Another quietly admirable habit is her emotional self-awareness. She doesn't deny her emotions or suppress them, but she doesn't let them rule her either. She reflects instead of reacts, especially when tensions rise. Whether it's dealing with conflict, criticism, or disappointment, she approaches the situation with a calm that comes from emotional intelligence rather than indifference. She takes responsibility for her feelings, communicates with clarity, and seeks understanding rather than victory. This ability to navigate emotional terrain with maturity makes others feel safe around her, and that safety is something men often seek more than they admit. There's also something deeply compelling about how she treats others when she has nothing to gain. She is kind without an agenda, generous without expectation, and thoughtful in the smallest interactions. Whether it's how she speaks to a server, how she checks in on a friend who's been quiet, or how she notices when someone feels left out, she brings presence and compassion into every space she enters. These are not grand gestures but consistent ones, small, caring details that build an atmosphere of warmth. Her empathy is not performative, it's lived. Men quietly observe this kind of woman and instinctively feel that she would be a nurturing, loyal presence in any kind of relationship. A habit that stands out in the quietest yet most powerful way is the way she embraces her individuality. She's not trying to fit into every room. She's not contorting herself to be more likable, agreeable, or digestible. She wears what she loves, speaks how she truly feels, and pursues interests that genuinely matter to her. Her authenticity is unbothered by trends or the need for external approval. That quiet confidence in her uniqueness is far more attractive than any carefully curated version of perfection. Men admire her not just because she stands out, but because she's unapologetically herself. She also has a way of creating peace rather than chaos. In her presence, things feel calmer, more grounded. She doesn't stir up gossip, drama, or emotional confusion. She simplifies rather than complicates. Whether she's speaking with honesty, walking away from unnecessary conflict, or setting healthy boundaries without anger, she exudes a kind of emotional steadiness that men find comforting and admirable. Her life is not built on proving others wrong or seeking validation. It's built on intentional choices and inner stability. That kind of peace is magnetic in a world that often feels loud and restless. What goes often unnoticed but deeply felt is how she treats herself when no one else is around. She doesn't berate herself for falling short, nor does she rely on constant productivity to feel worthy. She gives herself grace. She makes space for rest, growth, and joy in private moments. She nurtures her own dreams, takes care of her mental and physical health, and speaks to herself with kindness. This unseen self-respect builds a quiet radiance that shows in her posture, her eyes, and her presence. Men may not see the hours of inner work she puts in, but they feel its impact when she walks into a room. Lastly, there is admiration for the way she brings lightness into life. She knows how to laugh, how to find joy in the small things, and how to not take everything so seriously. She doesn't need constant entertainment or drama to feel alive. She brings a refreshing sense of ease and playfulness. Her ability